Just walk away, idiot. Malik Carter heard it before he saw anything, the rasp of a woman's voice ricocheting around the concrete bones of the garage. It was 11:03 p.m. on a Thursday, and he was doing what he always did after a long day at the clinic, dragging 2 bags of recycling from the elevator to the blue bin near the loading ramp. Boston nights in late fall ran cold enough to sharpen a man's breath into silver ribbons, but the voice came hot and messy, soaked in liquor and panic. "Where are my keys? Keys, damn it, where are you?" At 39, Malik had learned the sober physics of minding his business. 10 years as a physical therapist, college athletes, car accident rehabs, stubborn weekend warriors, had taught him that not every wobble needed a catching hand. People insisted on breaking in the same place twice. People swore they didn't need help, then needed it anyway. Still, something in the voice, hoarse, vulnerable, proud and collapsing, reached into that well-worn reflex he kept for trouble. He rounded a line of concrete pillars and found her slumped against a pearl-white BMW, the kind with door handles that hid like secrets. A woman in her early 30s, pale as the headlight glare, blonde hair scraped into a bun that had lost its battle hours ago. The satin of a designer suit had given up pretending it wasn't wrinkled. Mascara had performed a slow-motion surrender down both cheeks. The purse at her feet had disgorged half its stomach, a lipstick with its cap gone missing, a titanium card, receipts like snow flurries, a dangling key fob 1 inch from a storm drain. "Ma'am, you okay?" Malik asked, keeping his voice low, palms open, the way you speak to a spooked colt. She looked up, and even blurred by alcohol, her eyes were a violent ocean blue. "I'm fine, fine. Keys are hiding." "You're not fine," he said gently. "You're drunk, and your keys are right there." He crouched and pinched the fob before the drain could win. When he looked up, her mouth had already formed a sentence she hadn't yet decided whether to deliver. "I don't need help from—" She stopped. The rest hung between them like a confession neither of them wanted, from someone like you. He could have called building security and walked. He could have pretended he didn't hear the swallowed slur, the old poison, the thing that could turn a good deed into a bad headline. Instead, he heard sneakers squeak behind him. Derek from 4B, cynic, divorce veteran, part-time doomsayer, stood at the top of the ramp shaking his head. "Malik, man, just walk away, idiot. She's white, she's rich, she's hammered. This only ends one way for you." He wasn't wrong. A black man alone with a very drunk white woman in a half-empty garage was all optics and no mercy. But the woman slid down the door an inch, and in that inch he saw it. Human collapse. Breath like broken glass. A person whose defenses had finally surrendered to gravity. "I can't just leave her," Malik said. "Then you're a bigger fool than I thought," Derek muttered, retreating toward the elevator. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Malik knelt, set the keys on the hood where she could see them. "What's your name?" She blinked hard, choosing the syllables. "Sloan. Sloan Kensington. I live here, 7C. But I can't. Stand without the world tilting," Malik finished softly. "I'm Malik, 4A. Let's get you upstairs, Sloan." "I can walk," she tried. Her knees made it a single second before physics rebelled. Malik caught her in a grip that said, "Both I've got you and I'll let go the second you say." He was 6'2", solid from a life of lifting more than his own weight, warm brown skin under a navy hoodie, sneakers practical enough to outrun bad decisions. "Sure you can," he said. "But for the next 3 minutes, let's pretend walking comes with a spotter." Getting her from the garage to the elevator took the choreography of 2 people learning a dance they hadn't chosen. She swore at the floor for moving. She pushed him away, then hooked her fingers in his sleeve and wouldn't release. In the elevator, she glanced at him sideways, eyes trying and failing to focus. "You're very tall," she announced, then frowned as if fact-checking herself. "And handsome. Has anyone told you that?" "You're very drunk," he said, because scaling truth to size was his only superstition. "Has anyone told you that?" She hiccuped a laugh that turned into something uglier. "My ex-husband told me I drink too much." Her jaw set. "Maybe he was right, but tonight I earned it. Lost the biggest client. The board wants my head. Everything's... She made a dropping motion with her hand. We can deal with all of that tomorrow, Malik said. Tonight we do water, ibuprofen, and a horizontal surface. The elevator spit them onto 7. 7C was a world that glowed. Floor-to-ceiling windows wore the city like jewelry. The furniture held its breath for magazine photographers. Malik got Sloan to the couch and found a blanket with the soft weight of ridiculous money. He grabbed a glass tumbler, ran the water so cold it hurt his knuckles, rummaged until he found the pill bottle with the good stuff. Take these, he said, pressing ibuprofen into her palm. Then drink the water, a lot of it. Your brain will try to murder you in the morning. This is your legal defense. She obeyed, then reached without warning and caught his hand. Her fingers were small and icy. Why are you helping me? She asked, voice suddenly small, the bravado leaking out through a tear escaping the mascara wreckage. Because it's the right thing to do, he said. I almost said something ugly about you, she whispered. You heard it. You saw it on my face. I heard a drunk woman about to regurgitate whatever the world taught her, Malik said. People say worse things sober. I'm choosing to believe you're better than your worst moment. I'm not, she said, and the words cracked. I'm the worst. CEO who can't keep clients. Wife who couldn't keep her husband. Daughter who can't keep approval. You're human, he said. Humans fail sometimes. It's the only club with full membership. You don't even know me, she murmured. I know what drowning looks like, he said softly, and I know a stranger's hand sometimes makes the difference. Her eyes fluttered. Thank you, Malik. From 4A, she said, like the address itself was a charm. You're good. She fell asleep, holding his fingers. He waited until the weight of her grip slackened, tucked his hand free, set a second glass of water by the first, and scribbled a note on the back of a courier slip he found on the counter. You're okay. Call if you need anything. M. 4A. He locked the door behind him with the key fob he'd rescued, slid it back through the mail slot, and walked the hallway with his pulse loud enough to count. He'd done the right thing. He'd also just walked straight into a minefield and left footprints. Sloan woke to sunlight like interrogation, a headache like heavy machinery, and a blanket that smelled faintly of sandalwood and clean cotton, the olfactory signature of someone careful. She was still in yesterday's suit. The mirror over the console table showed a woman who looked like a cautionary tale about ambition and waterproof mascara. The previous evening returned in a staggered slideshow. The boardroom like a firing squad. Hartley Capital cutting ties after her CFO smirked at her across a spreadsheet. The bar with its bitter white wine. The garage. The stranger with hands gentle as instruction. On the coffee table, 2 glasses, one empty, one sweating, a pharmacy bottle, and a note. You're okay. Call if you need anything. Matter of 4A, M. The name pulled a thread of memory. Malik, warm brown eyes, calm gravity, a voice that didn't rush, didn't scold, didn't judge. And God, had she nearly said the quiet part out loud? Had ugly inherited reflexes almost chosen themselves? Her phone vibrated itself across the table. 17 texts from Vivian Torres, her assistant who did not believe in euphemism. Where are you? Board started at 9:30. It's 9:47. Answer me, Sloan. I can stall, but not forever. This is bad. Sloan sat up too fast. The world tilted and snapped back. She swallowed dry and then swallowed water. She could call Vivian. She could call her ex, Theo, and receive a lecture disguised as concern. She could call her mother and receive concern disguised as judgment. She found herself, absurdly, in yesterday's heels, hair pinned with a fork from the kitchen drawer, standing at 4A knocking with the knuckles of a person about to beg a favor from a stranger. The door opened. In daylight, with her brain less fogged by ruin, she saw him. Malik had the kind of face that steadied a room, strong jaw softened by a cleft that appeared when he smiled, lashes so long it felt like an affront, shoulders earned in a place without mirrors. He wore a worn gray t-shirt and dark jeans, and behind him, books, framed degrees, resistance bands coiled like bright snakes. Sloan, he said, not surprised, not smug, just present. How's the construction crew inside your head? Unionized, she said, because embarrassment had to wear a joke. I wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry for anything I said or almost said. That's not, she stopped. She'd promised herself after the divorce to cut every lie in half. It's not who I want to be. You don't need to apologize or explain, he said, leaning against the jam like daylight had been designed to land on his shoulder. Do you want coffee? You look like a person who needs coffee more than she needs absolution. I have a board meeting, she said, glancing at the time with a wince, which I am already late for. Then you're late, he said. 5 more minutes won't change the fate of empires. Coffee will. She stepped into his apartment and into a world that didn't try to impress anyone. Where her penthouse communicated taste with money, his place communicated attention with use. A low plant stretching toward the light, shoes aligned by the door, a corkboard with photos, game tickets, a child's crayon masterpiece signed Nyla. You're a physical therapist, Sloan said, noting the diplomas. UMass Boston, DPT, Mass General Hospital, Sports Rehab. The wall wore his life without a single brag. 10 years, he said, pouring coffee dark enough to fix things. Bodies that forgot how to trust themselves, reminding them they can. And when you're not rescuing the incompetent in your garage? He slid a mug to her. She tasted it and closed her eyes. I'm CEO of Kensington Urban, she said when she opened them. Commercial real estate. And last night we lost Hartley, which means today my board is deciding whether I'm ruin or a turnaround story. Hence the wine, he said, and the parking lot archaeology project. Malik, she said, gripping the mug because something had to anchor her. Did I say anything awful? I have this pit in my stomach that I almost said something racist. He didn't let her off the hook. He didn't string her up. He took a measured breath, then nodded once. You almost did. You stopped. And yes, drunk thoughts can be sober tells. But I've learned the difference between who someone is and what their fear ventilates when their filters are down. You look like a person arguing with herself. I decided to believe the better half could win if given a chance. So it was so absurdly decent she wanted to cry. You could have walked away, she said softly. Someone told you to. Derek always tells me to, Malik said with a half smile. He's not wrong about the hazard. Being a black man helping a drunk white woman can go sideways fast. But the math of risk isn't the math of right. Something steadied inside her. Not the headache, not the career imploding in 3-act structure. Just the tiny, potent knowledge that last night did not have to calcify into shame if she did the next thing right. I'm already late enough to get fired, she said. But thank you for the water, for the blanket, for the dignity. If there is ever anything, favor, kidney, drywall, name it. You don't owe me anything, he said, but I'll keep the drywall in mind. She almost left. She didn't. Do you ever need dinner? She blurted. As in tonight? As a thank you, or as an apology, or, and this is terrifying, as human company without agendas. He studied her for a heartbeat in which she felt weighed and not found wanting. Yeah, he said. I need dinner sometimes. Tonight works. Great, she said, and was surprised that she meant it like oxygen. I'll bring something from Adriana's. 6:30? 6:30, he said. Sloan stepped back into a world that would devour her if she showed it a soft throat. She rode the elevator down 30 floors to the street, slid into the back seat of a car that did not care about her feelings, and told the driver to take her to Kensington Urban. She checked her reflection. The woman who looked back wasn't the glossy avatar of the company newsletter. She was swollen-eyed, human, unfinished, and somehow steadier. The boardroom did not reward lateness or humanity. Nathaniel Decker, her uncle in the interim chair after her father's heart scare, watched her enter like she was an unvetted acquisition. Douglas Shaw, CFO, tapped a stack of paper with theatrical precision. Around the polished walnut, 8 faces that knew how to smile for the globe and vote like executioners. This is exactly the behavior we're discussing, Nathaniel said. You're brilliant when you're on. Lately, you're not on. I had a difficult evening, Sloan said. We all have difficult evenings, Douglas replied, sliding a document toward her, as if it might bite him if he pushed too hard. Leaders show up. Hartley is gone. $15 million in management fees. Gone because they no longer have confidence in current leadership. Give me 2 weeks, she said. I'll bring them back or replace them. We gave you 6 months, Nathaniel said, his tone stiff with familial pity. We'll vote on your position in 2. The meeting bled her without drawing blood. When it ended, she fled to the executive restroom, ran water over her wrists until the sting rearranged her inhale, and stared at a woman whose life was a tower built on other people's designs. Vivian found her there, curly hair scraped into a bun, eyeliner perfect, patience butchered. Talk. I blew it, Sloane said simply. Hartley, the optics, probably the job. Then ask for help, Vivian said, as if the verb hadn't been ripped from Sloane at birth. You don't have to be a marble statue. From who? Sloane asked. Everyone in that room is waiting to write my eulogy. My mother wants me married to a donor. My ex wants a bigger settlement. My father wants a son. Ask anyway, Vivian said. Or build a new room with different people. Sloane thought of Malik stirring coffee like a sacrament, of an apartment where books lived out loud, and a corkboard wore a child's art like a medal. The idea that help might exist without strings felt like her first illegal joy in years. At 6:29, she stood at Malik's door with 2 paper bags that smelled like redemption in butter and garlic. He opened wearing the same ease as morning. No tie, no armor, no appetite for performance. I brought apologies in ravioli form, she said. You don't need to apologize, he said, but I won't argue with ravioli. They ate at a table that had learned the weight of elbows and laughter. Sloane talked in sentences that didn't require bullet points. Malik listened the way PTs listen to a patient describing pain, tracking, mapping, curious, never pitying. She learned he was one of 6, Kendra, Damon, Kesha, Malik, twins Devin and Nyla. A mother named Claudette who ran on prayer and grit in 2 jobs, now finally down to 1. He learned she could quote Monty Python and preferred old jazz to new money. You're different than I expected, she said, then winced, which is a terrible sentence, I know. It's an honest one, he said. What did you expect? A man who would be angry I almost said the wrong thing, she admitted. A man who would hold it like a debt. I hold thing, he said, but not like that. Her phone lit and buzzed. Theo. She silenced it so fast she almost knocked her water. X? He asked. X, she said. He wants to renegotiate the settlement because, of course he does. Is he the kind to let go of a bone? He's the kind to chew through a fence, she said, and realized she was not afraid of the conversation. Not with Malik filling the room with a very specific kind of safety. Not shields, not swords. Just presence. Can I ask something deeply uncool? She said. You mean more uncool than fork in hair chic? He teased. She laughed and the sound surprised her. Will you be my friend? Not the networking kind. The kind who tells me when I'm being a coward. The kind who will eat ravioli with me without expecting stock options. He looked at her over the rim of his glass, weighing the question like it deserved. Yeah, he said finally. I can do that. But full disclosure, I come with baggage. Family loud enough to have its own weather. Trust issues from a woman who wanted me to be a different man. A tendency to overthink before I leap. Baggage accepted, she said. Mine includes a mother who curates her life like a museum, a father who confuses love with legacy, and an entire board of directors who have mistaken my spine for a shareholder perk. They shook hands like conspirators sealing an alliance, both laughing at themselves. But Sloane felt it, the click of something real finding purchase. When she left that night, the city looked less like a tribunal and more like a map. She slept for the first time in weeks with both shoulders on the mattress and woke to the soft terror of wanting a Friday to be better than a Thursday. Not because of a metric, but because a person who lived in 4A existed in it. In another universe, she would have met Malik on a different errand, at the mailboxes, at the gym, in line for takeout. In this one, she'd met him at her absolute worst, and he had not looked away. That was the morning everything changed. Not because she had coffee, not because she had a plan, because for the first time in years, Sloane Kensington had a witness who saw her as a person worth rescuing, and a reason, sudden and simple, to rescue herself. Sloane hit the boardroom like a storm front that refused to apologize. A night of water and ibuprofen hadn't turned the ship, but Malik's quiet steadiness had done something stranger. It had returned her to herself. Vivian slid a thick leather folder toward her the minute she sat. Talking points. I also flagged Shaw's projections. He massaged the opex to make Hartley look worse. Bless you, Sloane whispered. The meeting was a grindstone. Nathaniel Decker spoke in a tone that implied he had been wronged by gravity since birth. Douglas Shaw adjusted his glasses before every dagger. We've prepared a vote to be held in 14 days, he said at last, smooth as lacquer. In the meantime, Ms. Kensington, we expect a remediation plan by Monday. After, in the executive restroom, Vivian stood guard by the sinks like a knight. 2 weeks, she said. Breathing room, barely. Barely count, Sloane said. We'll make it count. By the way, Vivian added, eyes flicking up, why do you smell like decent coffee instead of bar espresso? I met a neighbor, Sloane said, failing to keep the softness out of her voice. Vivian arched one perfect brow. A neighbor with a grinder? A neighbor with a backbone, Sloane said, and a kettle that sings. That evening, she arrived at 4A at 6:29 with paper bags from Adriana's and an apology rehearsed that turned into laughter against Malik's kitchen counter. They ate, they talked. She confessed the wobbling edges of her life. He answered with stories stitched from Dorchester heat and Mass General hallways. He showed her the corkboard. She paused at the crayon drawing. Auntie Sloane scrawled in purple, added days later when Nyla met her and promptly adopted her. You collect people, Sloane said softly. I don't, he said, startled. You do, she insisted. They stick. Across the next 3 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Takeout on Tuesdays, her place on Fridays, somewhere noisy and unpretentious on Saturdays where no one cared what a CEO wore. Sloane could exhale around Malik without performing competence as theater. Malik discovered that the woman the Boston Business Journal put on glossy covers stored old vinyl in milk crates and knew the smell of rain before rain arrived. At Wally's, Malik's pick for Saturday, they found a corner, let a quartet unspool the kind of standards that carried a person across bruised years. During the second set, an older saxophonist named Luther leaned toward their table and smiled like he'd been there the first time love was invented. You two are a good picture, he said. Don't let the world crop it. We're just friends, Sloane said quickly, and then felt the truth of not only bloom, inconvenient and thrilling. On Sunday, Kesha arrived bearing Tupperware and insight. So you're Sloane, she said, measuring her with warmth rather than suspicion. I'm the sister who tells him the things he doesn't want to hear. Which are, Sloane asked, rinsing salad leaves while Malik pretended not to eavesdrop. That he's allowed to be happy again. That not every strong woman will turn his worth into a project. That he should stop assuming women like you want a different man. Women like me? Rich, glossy, Kesha said, not unkind. You look like Beacon Hill threw a party in your closet, but your eyes are tired in the same places as ours. Later at dinner with her parents, the air temperature in the Kensington brownstone hovered somewhere between refrigerated and unwelcoming. Her father, Richard, poured a Bordeaux that had never met a plumber. Her mother, Eleanor, wore a silk blouse the color of expensive apologies. And what is it you do, Mr. Carter? Richard asked, voice lacquered. I'm a physical therapist, Malik said evenly. Sports rehab. How useful, Eleanor murmured, as if discussing a charming umbrella stand. We met in the garage, Sloane said, more brittle than she meant to be. I was having a bad night. Malik walked me upstairs before I fell on my face. You know, useful. Richard's jaw tightened. Sloane, might we speak privately? In the study, among leather spines and a grandfather clock that disapproved of everyone, Richard folded his hands. Your optics are reckless, he said. You are under scrutiny. Bringing home, this person is intentional provocation. This person has a name, Sloane said, heat rising into her cheeks. He also has more character in his little finger than most of the men who've shaken your hand. You are a Kensington, Richard said softly, dangerously, and you are behaving like someone who has forgotten what that means. What it means, Sloane said equally soft, is that love doesn't matter unless it can be photographed at a gala. Richard flinched. Eleanor appeared in the doorway as if conjured by tension. We are simply concerned, she said. Concerned that I'll choose someone you cannot display, Sloane replied. Duly noted. She walked back into her room where Malik stood with his coat over his arm like a soldier, prepared to retreat with dignity. "Ready?" she asked, voice light. "Always," he said. On the curb, she breathed into the ruin and let the cold arrange her anger into clarity. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" Malik asked. "For letting them address you like a resume. For still caring that they care." "You're allowed to care," he said. "Just don't let their carelessness choose your life." They ate greasy noodles from a place still lit at 11, sitting on her couch in socked feet, laughing until their eyes watered at a dumb comedy for the relief of it. Somewhere between chopstick jokes and the credits, she realized she'd taken his hand and hadn't let go. Photos of them surfaced a week later. A grainy kiss outside a restaurant, a laughter-lit profile at Wally's. Comments bloomed like mold. Gold digger, social climber. She's slumming. He's hunting. Racism wore hundreds of fonts and zero shame. Nathaniel summoned her. "This is a problem," he said, tapping the tablet where hate scrolled. "Clients are nervous." "My personal life is none of their business," she said. "When you are CEO," he replied, "everything is everyone's business." At Mass General, an anonymous complaint alleged that Malik was leveraging patient-family relationships. Dr. Reynolds called him in, read the letter, looked pained. "It's nonsense," he said. "We'll close it, but be careful out there." Theo revealed himself at last over coffee, all hair product and smile razors. "This boyfriend, what, 60 grand a year? It does undermine your lifestyle claim in the settlement." "How does his salary lower my dignity?" Sloan asked. He smiled as if she'd confirmed the hypothesis. "You always were naive about economics." By the time Vivian found her crying in the parking garage, mascara a carbon copy of that night, Sloane's edges had been sanded down to ache. "The board moved the vote," Vivian said, voice soft but not weak. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. "Then I guess I'll stop pretending I care what they vote," Sloan said, and felt something dangerous and clean open in her ribs. Malik came at 3 a.m., even though she'd told him not to. "Break up with me," he said first, eyes steady, voice gentle. "Save your company." "You don't get to decide that for me," she said, and the words came like a surprise truth. "Every man in my life has been making choices for me since I was 12. I'm unchoosing that." He cupped her face in both hands. "I don't want to be the reason you resent your own courage," he said. "You are the reason I found it," she answered. "If I lose the chair tomorrow, it's because I finally remembered my spine belongs to me." At 9 a.m., Sloan stood before the board and set her own gavel down. "Let me spare you a procedural motion," she said, voice clear enough to cut velvet. "I resign, effective immediately." "You will regret this," Douglas said. "I will regret very many things," she replied, picking up her bag. "Not this." She rode the elevator alone, a strange, exquisite lightness filling the space where dread had lived for years. Malik waited by her car, like someone who knew the end of a chapter by the sound a person made when they finally put something heavy down. "I quit," she said, laughing and crying at once. "I actually quit." He opened his arms and she stepped into the future like a door. By evening, her parents had frozen her out. Nathaniel left insisting messages. Theo sent a smug rose emoji and good luck. Vivian texted 3 words. "We build now?" "Do we?" Sloan asked Malik across the kitchen table littered in takeout boxes and legal pads. "We do," he said. "You'll build. I'll lift. We'll eat when we remember." "Will you? Are you sure?" He grinned. "I spent 10 years teaching people to stand again. I'm not leaving just when you've decided to run." They named it Meridian Realty Group because Sloan liked the way the word implied a line you could navigate by. Vivian handled operations with an iron calendar. Lucinda Hayes, who had survived 10 CFOs at Kensington Urban, joined for finance because she said she was done translating for cowards. Brett Patterson jumped the ship he'd been bailing for years to run property management with practical genius. Their first client was a boutique hotel chain whose founder had loved the way Sloan refused to pretend she wasn't starting over. "Honesty plays," he'd said on a Zoom, pointing his finger like punctuation. "We're in." The office was 3 rooms over a bike shop in Cambridge. Walls still chalky from fresh paint. The carpet new enough to hum. On the first morning, Malik brought in a coffee maker with a stainless carafe and a hand-lettered sign. "Coffee first, crisis later." Vivian snorted, then taped it permanently to the wall. They worked. They learned each other's corners. They fought in honest, contained ways and repaired just as honestly. Sloane called her mother once a week and left messages that said, "I'm trying." Eleanor texted back, "I'm listening." Richard did not call. The hurt receded like a tide that had finally remembered the moon. On a Tuesday 6 months in, Meridian hit profitability. Lucinda brought in a single cupcake with a candle, and everyone cried one at a time and pretended they weren't. Malik, who'd never cried easily, learned there was a kind of happiness that soaked you without asking permission. "Dinner," Sloane said that night, dragging him by the hand toward the door. "Wally's and then the good noodles." "We could just dance in the kitchen," he said, pulling her back by the fingers. They did, barefoot to a record that crackled, in the light of a refrigerator door he forgot to close. And if someone had photographed them there and posted it with a caption that said "Love learns its own address," neither of them would have cared. Bernard Whitmore wore money like a cologne. He loved a good club, a good deal, and a good story about himself in a good magazine. When his hotel group shortlisted Meridian for a contract worth $15 million a year, Sloane did the meetings with the rooms and the spreadsheets and the convincing, and Bernard did the thing where he invited you to My Place for the handshake. My Place, in this case, was the Marlboro Club, an institution that had never met a membership application it didn't prefer from someone's grandfather. Its bylaws were a masterpiece of discrimination without nouns. "I want to meet the whole team," Bernard said, swirling a drink that probably had its own Wikipedia page. "Key players, not just the face." "Of course," Sloane said, even as her stomach turned. She could picture the room already. Portraits like watchmen, waiters trained in 97 forms of polite exclusion, eyes that slid away from dark skin like it was a mistake in the frame. "We don't have to go," Vivian said that afternoon, shutting Sloane's office door with a click. "We can ask for a different venue, or we can say no. It's $15 million a year," Sloane said quietly. "It steadies us for 3. You didn't walk out on Kensington to sell us to a club that won't seat your partner." Sloane stared at the brick building across the street where cyclists locked their bikes to a sign that begged them not to. The word partner lodged under her breastbone with its full double meaning. Malik was her partner in a life that kept surprising her with its goodness. He was also increasingly the unofficial heart of the office. "I could not bring him," she said, hating herself instantly for how the sentence sounded. "Say he's with a patient." "That's hiding," Vivian said gently, "which is a choice, but not who you are." That night, Sloane told Malik. She told him all of it. The club, the way Bernard's smile lived in the same place as his disdain, the contract that would put Meridian beyond the reach of bad seasons, the strategy she had considered and instantly despised. "So I'm the part you don't bring," Malik said. He wasn't angry, he was something worse. Wounded in the quiet way men get when they have learned to translate pain into silence. "No," Sloane said, reaching for his hands. "You are the part I don't want to let them touch." "Love," he said gently, withdrawing his fingers. "If they can make you hide me for a contract, they already touched us." They argued without cruelty and without exit. Sloane insisted she was practicing triage. Stop the bleeding, then fix the broken ethics. Malik insisted the bleeding was the ethics. She slept on her side of the bed that night and stared at a ceiling that would not stare back. She went to the Marlboro alone. Bernard did the genial thing, the "I love your gumption" thing, the "we're aligned on values" thing that wealthy men say when they mean "I enjoy owning people with charm." Sloane did a presentation so clean it squeaked. The offer landed the next day with a thud felt across 3 laptops. It was obscene and perfect. Sloane stared at the document for a long time. She read it again. She thought about the woman in the garage, mascara in ruin, keys by a drain. She thought about the man who did not walk away. She called Bernard from the office kitchen because she wanted to be somewhere that smelled like coffee and not like her father's study. "Mr. Whitmore," she said when he answered, "we have to decline." A beat. "Why?" "Because I won't ask my team to cross a threshold that won't see all of us. And I won't ask my partner to forgive me for shrinking him." "I didn't say—" "You didn't have to," she said. "Your club did the talking." "Hurt," he said in the tone of a man who didn't hear anything but his own story. "You're making a mistake." "I hope so," she said, and hung up with her heart roaring in her ears. Vivian leaned in. "Well, I turned it down." Vivian closed her eyes, breathed once, then nodded. "Okay, We go find the clients who deserve us. Sloan laughed and cried at the same time. Are you mad? Of course, Vivian said, then smiled. At the club. Sloan went home hungry for Malik's arms and found a note instead. His handwriting neat, the words unsteady. I need a little space to believe I'm not a cost you can't afford. I love you. Q. The next 3 days stretched like wire. Sloan worked until the blue in the sky faded and returned. She answered emails too fast. She rearranged pens. She made a pot of soup no one ate. On the 4th, Kesha called and said, He's at Mama's doing a stubborn. Come get him. Claudette Carter's living room smelled like lemon oil and Sunday dinners. Malik sat on the edge of the couch with the posture of a man arguing with himself. You told me to be honest, Sloan said from the doorway, not waiting to be asked in. So here it is. I turned down Bernard. 15 million. Because I'm not going to be the woman who puts you behind a curtain. And because he's the kind of man who would make me. You shouldn't have to prove, Malik started. This isn't proof, she said, kneeling in front of him, hands on his knees as if the act might summon something holy. It's who I am. I'd rather fail for the right reasons than succeed wearing someone else's mask. Meridian is a company. You're my home. Claudette, who had been listening from the kitchen doorway with a dish towel like a flag, cleared her throat. Boy, she said to Malik, stop auditioning this woman and marry her. Mama, he said, strangled. Claudette, Sloan said, half laugh, half sob. I'm working on it. He pulled Sloan up, wrapped his arms around her, breathed her like medicine. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I was afraid that if I cost you something big, you'd wake up one day and measure me and come up an inch short. You are the measure, she said. They went home. They slept with their foreheads touching like an electrical circuit. In the morning, Sloan made pancakes shaped like nothing in particular and burned 3 before they were edible. Malik ate them like victory. 2 weeks later, Meridian signed 2 smaller contracts with clients who liked to meet in places with daylight and children. The Whitmore rejection became a story people told about them. The boutique that said no when the number was large enough to make you lie to yourself. A local podcaster interviewed Sloan under a headline that made her cringe and then secretly glow. Integrity is a business plan. Theo's last stand dissolved in family court. He had argued that Sloan's new lifestyle proved she didn't need certain assets. The judge, a woman who wore reading glasses that had ruined men, arched her brow. Need is not a legal metric, Mr. Masterson, she said dryly, and awarded Sloan precisely what the law said was hers. She gave Theo a look Sloan cherished privately for weeks. That night, Malik took Sloan to the garage where they had first collided with the worst version of fate. He wore a button-down. He looked like home. This is where you taught me that doing the right thing sometimes makes for terrible optics, he said, smiling, and that you do it anyway. You taught me that, she said. He dropped to one knee on the painted 7, a ring in his palm that glittered like a laugh. Sloan Kensington, he said, voice steady and soft. Will you marry me and spend the rest of your life not walking away, especially when it's hard? Yes, she said before the question finished, before breath finished, before fear could organize. Yes, right now, yes. He slid the ring on her finger. Her hands shook so much he had to steady them with his own. Derek from 4B happened to be parking and saw the whole thing and whooped loud enough to summon 3 floors of neighbors. I was wrong, he shouted across the concrete. I was loud wrong. I love being wrong. They laughed until they couldn't, and then kissed until a motion-activated light decided their joy was a security risk and turned on. They did not plan a white-glove wedding at a museum. They planned a day with both families and all the noise love deserves. The ceremony took place in Dorchester at the community center where Claudette taught chair yoga twice a week, and where Sloan had funded a new sensory gym in lieu of favors to rich people who didn't need them. The room wore strings of warm bulbs. The tables wore mason jars and roses. The food wore soul. Eleanor came, pale and proud and shaking. Richard did not. When Claudette hugged Eleanor in the doorway, with a sincerity that brooked no negotiation, Eleanor cried the kind of tears that clean things. I'm late, Derek said, rushing in with a crooked tie and a grin. But I brought a toaster and a speech. God help us, Kesha muttered, then kissed his cheek. Claudette's pastor officiated with a voice that could talk a summer storm into behaving. He spoke of vows like work, of joy like a practice, of choosing each other in the glare and not the shadows. When he said, "Speak now," no one did, because everyone who might have had was either gone or converted. Sloane wore a silk slip that refused to be drama and a pair of shoes she could dance in. Malik wore navy and a smile that made Kesha elbow Nyla and whisper, "Look what joy looks like." Vivian, Lucinda, and Brett stood together and cried stealthily behind programs. Neela scattered petals with the precision of an engineer. Damon gave Malik a hug that broke and remade ribs. Theo did not exist. When they spoke vows, they wrote them plain. "I promise to tell you the truth even when it's ugly," Sloane said, hands shaking only once. "And to choose the U.S. that exists over the story other people write about us." "I promise," Malik said, "to be the person who doesn't make your life smaller and to remind you of your power on the days you're certain you've lost it." They jumped the broom to cheers so loud the old gym windows hummed. Luther from Wally's played their first dance, saxophones spilling a song that made people hold their breath. The cake tasted like a secret childhood remembered. The speeches tasted like home. Derek lifted a paper cup and said, "I told this man to walk away. I was trying to protect him the only way I knew how. From the way the world looks at someone like him, near someone like her." He ignored me. Thank God. Sometimes the brave thing is staying when every voice in your head says don't. Here's to the stayers. Eleanor stood, surprising herself, and took a breath that shook. "I taught my daughter to be beautiful and presentable," she said. "I forgot to teach her to be happy. She taught me instead." "Malik, you gave me back my child. Thank you." Claudette hugged Eleanor again and whispered, "We'll co-mom this woman yet." They danced until shoes came off and hair came down, and the DJ put on a track that made even Lucinda clap off beat. At some point, Sloane swirled in the middle of it, with her eyes closed, and felt utterly, relentlessly present. "Regrets?" Malik asked against her temple. "Not one," she said, "except that we didn't find each other sooner. Imagine how many more noodles we could have eaten." They built a life that understood Mondays. Meridian grew without metastasizing. They turned down business that would have required them to lie. They hired interns from places resumes usually don't list. They paid people on time and well. They made a line item for childcare during client meetings. They wrote a handbook that began, "We are not a family. We are a workplace that expects decency and offers it back." People sent screenshots of that first page to friends with the caption, "Goals." On Sundays, they ate at Claudette's until plates were clean. On alternate Wednesdays, they took Eleanor to dinner at a place that did not have a maitre d' who graded shoes. Eleanor learned to ask questions that were not traps. Richard sent a note after 6 months that said, "If you are happy, I am glad." It wasn't an apology. It was a beginning. Malik kept mending bodies and believing in their future. Sloane kept mending systems and believing in their people. They walked at dusk around Jamaica Plain, counting dogs and front porch pumpkins. The city softened around the edges the way a place does when it finally fits. On the first anniversary of that night, they drove to the garage, ridiculous and sentimental in equal measure. Sloane brought a single white rose. Malik brought the key fob she'd nearly lost that had been replaced long ago, but kept like a relic. "Here lies a pair of keys," she said, laying the rose on the painted 7. "And a woman who thought she had to break to be held. And a man who thought helping would cost him more than it gave," he added, sliding the fob beside the flower. They laughed at themselves and kissed and got honked at by a neighbor who clapped out the window. The motion light flashed on like a blessing. Later in their kitchen, the kettle sang the way it had the first morning. Malik poured, the steam rising like a new language. Sloane leaned against the counter, wedding band catching the light like a private joke. "Do you ever think about the alternate version?" she asked. "Where you listened to Derek and walked away?" "I do," he said. "Usually when I need to remind myself that courage is sometimes just 5 extra seconds of staying." "5 seconds changed my life," she said. "5 seconds made a life," he answered. They took their coffee to the porch. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a saxophone practiced scales that weren't ready yet. Somewhere in the city, a board met to vote someone in or out. Somewhere, a woman set down a glass of wine and decided to try again tomorrow. Sloane threaded their fingers together. Her ring was cool against his skin. His hand was warm against the rest of her life. "Walk away, idiot," she said softly, quoting the night that used to taste like shame and now tasted like a dare they'd met and beaten. I'm glad you didn't. Me too, Malik said, and kissed her like a promise with all the lights on.